Hello, welcome to an e-demo on events and actions on the Illustra Pro camera range. Events can be configured on our Illustra Pro camera. These events can then be used to trigger some actions. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So let's first of all open up a web browser, navigate to the IP address of the camera, and then I'm going to log in as an admin user. Once I'm in, I'm going to choose the setup button, and then I'm going to choose the events and actions menu. The first thing we can configure is some event settings. These settings will then be used for our actions, and the settings can either be SMTP for email or FTP or CIFS for file transfer. So let's first of all look at the SMTP settings. If we want to enable SMTP, we can just check the Enable SMTP box. We can then configure a mail server by filling in all of the required fields there. Once we fill those fields in, we can use the test button at the bottom here to send a test email to our server. Okay, so let's then move over to the FTP tab. FTP can be used for file transfer, to transfer files from the camera to the FTP server for viewing. If we want to enable that, we can choose the Enable FTP button. And then, like SMTP, all we need to do is fill in the server details. We can also set some file transfer rates there, and again, we can test that connection using the test button at the bottom. CIFS is another way of transferring files to a Windows network location. If we want to enable CIFS file transfer, we can just choose the Enable box there, and then all we need to do is enter that network location information there, and also the username and password which is required to log on to that location. Okay, so let's move over then to the next sub-menu, which is called Event Actions. And it's in here that we can use those settings and configure some actions which we can later add to events. Very simple to configure event actions. First of all you need to do is give it a name, or you can keep the default ones in there as well. And then all you need to do is configure what the action should be. So should that record, send an email, transfer a file using FTP or CIFS, and then you can also choose to include audio in there as well if you want to. Okay, so the next menu then is Alarm I/O. This particular camera has two alarm inputs. These can be used for connecting additional devices such as smoke detectors to the camera. Alarms from those devices can then be used to activate actions on the camera. So you can see I can change the name of my input if I want to. I can also enable or disable the input. I can set the normal state, and then whenever the alarm is activated and it goes into its not normal state, it will be used to trigger an action. Okay, so the next menu then is Analytics, and it's in here that we can define some analytical alarms. The first tab is ROI, which means region of interest, and we can define up to 5 regions of interest for this camera. If we want to add a region of interest, we can just choose Edit and then just draw the region of interest on this scene. And a region of interest is considered higher priority than the rest of the scene. So you might want to draw a region of interest around maybe an important door or window in your camera scene. Give my region a name, and I can just choose Add to add that. Moving down, we have face detection. So I can enable face detection, which will detect human faces. I can also choose to highlight the faces or enhance the faces. I can choose which orientation those faces are likely to be in my scene, and then I can choose an action which will be triggered from our event actions, which we configured in the event actions menu whenever a face is detected. The next tab is motion detection. What we can do is define a region in our scene which will then activate an action if motion is detected in that region. So what I can do is I can enable and disable motion detection. I can configure my region, again, just by choosing that button and drawing on the camera scene itself. I can also set the sensitivity for motion in the scene, and then finally, which action do we want to trigger whenever motion is detected. I can just choose Apply to apply that. The next tab is video intelligence, and there's a number of video intelligence rules which are configurable on the camera. So I can choose enable video intelligence there to enable it, and then I can choose new rule to begin defining one of the rules. So you can see all I need to do is give my rule a name. I can choose again which action do I want to be triggered whenever this rule is enabled. Then I can choose the rule type from the list of video intelligence rules. I'm going to choose linger here for this example. Once I have selected my rule, additional fields will open up underneath the rule type drop down. So we have overlap, so that's a percentage value which defines the percentage of the object which must be in your region of interest for the alarm to be activated. And for the linger alarm, we also have the linger time, and we can also set a color filter as well, so that only objects of a specific color will activate the alarm. And I can draw my region of interest again on my camera scene itself on the right hand side here. When I'm happy, I can choose save, and that alarm will be added to the table here. I can enable and disable it. I can edit it if I want to, and I can remove it by choosing the delete icon and then confirming. The final tab in here is blur detection. That will detect whenever your camera is blurred. So that might be if you have an intruder and somebody vandalizing the camera. If I want to enable that, I can just choose the enable button, and that will then be detected. Okay, so the last menu under events and actions is event logs, and if I select it, you'll see in here we get an event log which shows us all of the events which have been activated on this camera, and we can see what event it was, when it was activated, and also the component which caused the activation. You'll see that we have a number of pages in the event log there, so I can just select those to move between the pages. And if I want to acknowledge an event and remove it from here, I can just place a check next to it and choose delete and then confirm that deletion. We also have a tab at the top here called fault log, and in here we will see a list of any faults which have occurred on the camera.